This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Statement made. Next on Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Tip. Caught.
This is no time for that. In the pocket and a sack. Tim Jamison. Brady gets terrific.
Throws it. Get it. Touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number. And he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace, and welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. Coming up a little bit later on, we'll get the Michigan perspective on Hate Week and the in-state rivalry against Sparty from our good friend and cohort at Wolverine Digest, Michael Spath from WTKA in Ann Arbor. We'll also, though, get the Sparty side of things from one of the most notorious Sparties of them all. Rico Beard will be joining us a little bit later on. You don't want to miss it. But before we look ahead, let's look back, because a statement was made on Saturday night. As we suspected on our episode last week, Michigan was building up for. And you go back again to last year against Wisconsin and that loss when Brandon Peters got knocked out and Michigan had scored 10 straight points and even had the ball at the 2-yard line before he fumbled there. And then Wisconsin scored the final 17 points of the game. Michigan didn't win another game the rest of the season. Didn't win a game until Western Michigan this season. And you could kind of sense this harmonic convergence of coming full circle for the Maize and Blue was on the brink on Saturday night, and Michigan did it. Probably not the way many of us would have guessed. I mean, if I would have come on here last week on Michigan Podcast and told you that the Wolverines were going to run for 320 yards against a Wisconsin defense, even one that's maybe not quite as great as it's been in recent years, you'd have told me, hey, Steve, is meth back on the menu? Well, that's exactly what Michigan did. It's most rushing yards ever against a ranked team. Against a ranked team under Harbaugh, and it's most rushing yards against a ranked team and under any coach since Lloyd Carr against Illinois in 2000. And yes, for our millennial viewers, there was a time Illinois football was ranked. True story, bro. Indeed, the more you know. But hey, what Michigan did is they out-badgered the Badgers. And, I go back, me, I like themes. I like symbolism. And I remember the 2010 game against Wisconsin when they came into the big house, did not throw a pass in the second half. James White and Monte Ball combined for over 300 yards rushing between them. And they just absolutely detesticled us. I mean, they just took our manhood right from between our legs and they stomped on it right there on the block M. And then they laughed. And that was a moment when we knew our brand, our rep, who we were as a program, our identity was gone. And those guys in Madison, they kind of hijacked it from us. Saturday night, I think we got our swagger back. We got it back. We took their manhood from them. We took them out of their game, and we did it with a prime time audience. Now, there's another program in this league that has taken our brand and taken our identity from us, stomped on it repeatedly, and laughed. And that's the team we're going to face this week in Michigan State. Now, can Michigan do what it did last week? Well, that's the worst loss Wisconsin has had in any regular season game since 2008. It's the first time in 33 Big Ten road games Wisconsin had lost by more than 7 points. And since 2011, only 2 teams have beaten Wisconsin by 10 points or more, Alabama and Ohio State. They won the national championship the seasons they did that. So that's not the kind of defeat, that holistic, systemic defeat. Wisconsin football doesn't suffer that very often. Now, here's what also doesn't happen very often. Michigan winning a game wearing white jerseys against a team that's ranked in their stadium. We know the numbers. We don't have to go through. We all know it's been since 2006. 2006, we've been living this long national nightmare as Michigan fans. Mark D'Antonio has covered the spread against Michigan 10 years in a row. He's won 8 of the last 10 straight up. We know what Michigan State's going to be on Saturday at its very best. The question becomes, will Michigan be at its best? What kind of game will Michigan play? Will Harbaugh let Mark D'Antonio dictate the game to him again and get him out of his game plan like what happened a year ago? Will Michigan understand the difference between persistence and stubbornness when it comes to the running game? Will Shea Patterson make the throws we've needed a Michigan quarterback to make in road games, really since Chad Henne was doing against Michigan State back in 2007, the last time we won a game at Spartan Stadium? My son Noah was 8 months old. I'm not saying it's been forever, but it's been forever. If you want me to drink the Kool-Aid, and I got emails this week, some of you were asking me if I should open the show up drinking Kool-Aid after last week. Nope. I loved last week. It was a blast. But what did I tell you after Notre Dame? I'm not jumping on any bandwagons other than I'm always on the maize and blue bandwagon, but you know what I'm saying. I'm not buying any hype. I'm not drinking any Kool-Aid until we beat a ranked team on the road. Well, after beating Penn State last week, Michigan State is back in the rankings. The game is on the road. Now, I got a pitcher and a cup on my counter, and I'm thirsty. I'd love to drink me some of that Kool-Aid, but the Wolverines are going to have to pour it for me. I want to say thank you. We've landed several new Patreon supporters at Michigan Podcast since the season started. Thank you to those of you that are supporting us. And if you would like to, we want you to know that you get some exclusive content that we provide for you each week via Patreon, including my instant reaction post-game podcast, my picks for the Michigan game, pre-kickoff, and more. As a thank you to those of you that decide that you like what we do here at Michigan Podcast enough to support us at Patreon. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Back here on Michigan Podcast, and we have a special guest with us this week. Rico Beard is really an institution when it comes to sports talk radio and local sports commentary in the Detroit area. Also, sort of our Michigan State counterpart. And I wanted to get the opposing view, non-trolling. I'm not into the smack talk, particularly when you're 0-10 against the spread in the rivalry. Maybe that might have something to do with it. Okay, but I wanted to get some serious analysis on this game. And so, Rico, my name is Steve Deace. Thanks for joining us today on Michigan Podcast, brother. How are you?
Steve, no problem, man. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start with, to me, I think a big story in this game is the health of the Spartans. And, Michigan's been playing without Rashawn Gary and Tariq Black, but they've got a level of depth there from recruiting that they've been able to at least find guys who are passable at those positions. When I was analyzing Big Ten rosters coming into the year, when I looked at the top 4 teams in the Big Ten East, I thought their starters were all kind of pretty much even. I thought Michigan State's depth mainly because of the 2016 class, and that was kind of decimated by departures, that maybe the depth at Michigan State, if they ran into an injury bug, might not be where Ohio State and Penn State is at. So I think that's a big key for Saturday. And I know that snotty Michigan fans were going to say, Sparty will have everybody ready for that game. Magic Johnson's playing on Saturday, right? But what's the real scoop in terms of health for Michigan State, who played without 7 starters last week?
You don't know. Mark D'Antonio did not release a depth chart today, so we have no idea who's going to play, who's going to be the people out there, and you're going to have to go from there. They did show, Steve, that they could go into a hostile environment and play with the backups. And I know a lot of people say, well, the recruiting's not that great, but it's kind of cliche, but it's true. And maybe that's why it's a cliche. D'Antonio goes out and gets the players that he wants. He found guys to win. At the end of the game, they had Andre Welch out there as a wide receiver. He's a walk-on, but they found a way to win. Larice Nelson made some big-time catches. He was a guy they got as a last-second pickup on signing day. So they have people out there. I think it's more so the scheme and the technique that they use, and not necessarily, the names on the back of the jersey. They all know the system, and D'Antonio preaches, next man up. Yeah, would you like to have a lot of those guys from 2016? Oh, yeah. The defensive line would be so much better. And, you look. The biggest thing is looking at a guy like Montez Sweat at Mississippi State, the other MSU, knowing he was at Michigan State, but he got kicked off the team. He's going to probably be like the number 7 pick in the NFL draft. So, yes, a lot of attrition, a lot of things are gone, but they believe in the people that they have there. Now, as far as who's going to play, great question. L.J. Scott's been a game-time decision for like 3 games. He got hurt in the Arizona State game. Didn't even go to Happy Valley. We're going to wait to see what happens. Cody White broke his hand at Northwestern. I doubt if he comes back, Michigan fans. So unless he went to go see a faith healer, I don't think Cody's going to come back. He wants to play, but he has a broken bone in his hand, and you kind of need your hand if you're a wide receiver.
Yeah.
I think Darryl Stewart will probably be back, which will help MSU because now you can't just double up on Felton Davis. Now you have to, actually, play Felton Davis honest because Darryl Stewart could be that other receiver. They may get an offensive lineman back in Kevin Jarvis, the offensive guard. But other than that, I don't think that they're going to get too many more pieces back because, they would love to have Josiah Scott back, their top corner. But they're talking about maybe even playing him in the final couple of games and using that redshirt rule on him.
Well, Michigan fans, and you know this, you talk to him every day, Rico, as well. We like to criticize Don Brown's defense, even though it's like number 1 in the country every year he's been here. We don't double team anybody, so that's one of the big controversies is we just play man to man. Michigan fans think we play man to man every down, every distance, which isn't true, but that's the perception out there. I do think the offensive line issue for Michigan State, particularly when you're dealing with interior guys and the way Don Brown and the blitzing schemes and the things he likes to run, to me, those are the injuries that are the biggest to know. Are those guys available for Michigan State or not? Because I think that goes a long way in terms of Michigan State's ineffectiveness up front. Last year at Michigan, Rico, we played 13 different offensive line combinations because of injuries. And I don't care how you recruit. You're playing 13 different offensive line combos. You're not going to be good up there. There's no cohesion up there. And with the injuries Sparty has had, you guys have played 5 or 6 already this season, I think is right.
6. Yeah. Every game has been a different offensive line combination. They had a ton of injuries. A lot of guys that they thought were going to come in and contribute, they just couldn't because of injuries, whether it happened during the game or not. I'll say this, Steve. Yeah, if you leave Felton Davis one-on-one, Penn State tried that at the end of the game. It didn't work out so well for them. Felton Davis is a freak. I like to say, and I know people are going to be like, oh, my God, you're overhyping him. I'm not saying that he is DeAndre Hopkins, but his game style is very similar to DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver for the for the Houston Texans, where he can make difficult catches look easy. He could bail out his quarterback. And that's the reason why Deshaun Watson looks so good, because it's really DeAndre Hopkins going out making catches. And for Brian Lewerke, he just has to it's like a video game. Just get it somewhere near Felton Felton to make the catch. Even the game-winning touchdown catch against Penn State wasn't the best throw. But Felton went back, got it, maintained his balance, didn't go out of bounds, and scored. So, yeah, you'll have a lot of Michigan fans angry on Sunday or Monday whenever the game is over if they leave Felton one-on-one, because I do think that Michigan has some really good secondary, borderline great secondary. But Felton he's 6'4", and the last time I checked, none of your corners are 6'4".
Well, you and I are old enough to remember when Plaxico Burress basically beat number 3 Michigan by himself in East Lansing. I think that was back in 1999, and one of the great games
for you guys.
Yes, yeah. In fact, I think he just scored another touchdown on a jump ball as we were doing this. Came out of the stands.
Tom Brady was on the bench.
Yes, well, we benched him. And played Drew Henson instead. Yep, that's true. Yep, Bill Burke at quarterback for Michigan State. But when you can throw it to Plaxico Burress, probably didn't matter who really was the quarterback that day. The mental and emotional dynamic of this rivalry. So, like Doug Karsh, I actually attended Michigan State because I just thought it was a more fun school to go to. And Michigan, You do
know that Doug Karsh was my roommate in college, right?
I did not know that. No, I did not know that.
Doug and I were roommates freshman year.
So I wanted to go to Michigan out of high school. I only got an 18 on the math portion of my ACT, so they wouldn't admit me. So I went to junior college, and then all my friends went to Michigan State. So I actually went to school there and rooted for Michigan the whole time. So I know my wife's family are all Michigan grads, so I know every side of this rivalry. And I do think that, in the years when it was John L. Smith, as Bob Wojnarowski used to write, and even maybe in the Perlis era, there was something to the Michigan State puts it all into this one game. But I think that's partly true now even. But, Mark D'Antonio's got 9 wins over top 10 teams since 2009, I think it is. So I think it's 10 wins. Okay. I think it's just how he approaches big games in general. I do a podcast on the Big Ten every week, and I said this on our podcast at Bigger 10, that I think Mark D'Antonio on game day intimidates even Urban Meyer, who's got 3 NCAA championships, Jim Harbaugh, who was 6 inches from a Super Bowl, where he gets these guys. He did it to Franklin last Saturday. He gets you in the heat of the game, and he makes you think you've got to do something different than you're used to doing. And then once you do that, like, I'm not going to give the ball to Ezekiel Elliott, for example, or I'm going to chuck and duck 30 times in a monsoon like we did last year. All right. Or it's once he gets you in that mindset as a coach on game day where you're like, I got to do something different to beat this guy because what we normally do doesn't work. That's when he traps you, and you almost have to just ignore it and just say, you know what? I got to just play my game and not let him make me think he's imposing his will on me. Because I think a lot of these coaches in this league over the years, he's intimidated them on game day, Rico.
I think it's a lot of it is because, Steve, he doesn't back down. He has his team saying, guys, just like before Penn State, he said, here's the thing. We have gone into hostile territory before with half a team, and we won. We went into Columbus and beat them with a backup QB. So we've done it before. He draws on the past experience of this is nothing new for Michigan State. And he has them believing that you can't stop us if we put our mind together. And I do think a lot of the coaches outthink themselves and they do things out of the ordinary. I mean, last year, James Franklin didn't play Saquon Barkley that much. This year, he didn't try to throw the ball deep down the field on the secondary. Mm-hmm. He does get coaches, out of their game and out of their mindset. And, you saw the trick plays that he did. And, and they asked him about it today in the press conference, and he was like, well, I guess I got to come up with more trick plays for Michigan and other teams. Like, he knows, okay, you're watching me, but I don't care because we're limited in what we have. We don't have 5-star players on their team, but we have guys who believe that they can win. And in sports, that's often the most dangerous team is a team that believes they can win.
I think from the Michigan perspective, that's why last week's game was so important because, the initial phase of building a program is first you got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And Michigan has done that under Harbaugh, and they're bullying those teams and they're dominating them. And now they have to start beating the better teams. And so, game day made the big deal about the terrible record against top 15 teams. And I said on our podcast last week, you could just sort of sense, because it was the loss at Wisconsin last year when Brandon Peters got knocked out just as he was kind of coming of age, and we didn't win a game the rest of the way, that was sort of what derailed our season at the end last year, and you could sort of sense it coming full circle. How do you look at where Michigan is at right now as a Michigan State fan compared to going into the game last year? Do you think Michigan is more prone to slug it out and play the way that Mark D'Antonio is going to make you play? Do you think Shea Patterson makes them a dramatically different team than what you've seen so far under Harbaugh, where they kind of had to make do on the fly with makeshift quarterbacks? What's your read from the opposing camp?
I mean, from the opposing camp, looking at this game, I think it's going to be another close game like it always is. I mean, D'Antonio's either flat out won the game or covered the spread every time he's played Michigan. As an opposing fan base, your people watching this won't like it, but it's kind of a show me. Every year you tell me how good Michigan is going to be.
Yep.
Every year you tell me that watch out for Denard Robinson, Devin Gardner, John O'Corn, Wilton Spate. Just naming off all the different quarterbacks, Tate Forcier. This guy's going to be the difference maker. Just wait and see. And in the end, they're not. So I'm not saying that Michigan's not good, but as watching it from a State fan perspective, show me. Stop telling me. Go out and do it, and then I'll say, okay, you're changed. But until then, dude, it's Groundhog's Day.
What worries you about Saturday? What if you're like, hey, this happens, and barring the generic, if we lose the turnover battle, we all know that. But
right.
But as a guy who watches Michigan State closely the way we watch Michigan here on Michigan Podcast, if blank looks like this is the way the game's going to be played, we're in trouble. What is that blank?
If Michigan is allowed to score early, because Michigan is a second half team. So if you're Michigan State, just like last year, you got to go out and score early and allow them to, try to play from behind. Mm-hmm. If you're MSU, they've had problems scoring. If you fall behind early to Michigan, it's going to be lights out. And you could see something similar to what happened against Wisconsin, because once the Michigan defense smells blood in the water, they're dangerous. I will give them that. Mm-hmm. They may not play 60 minutes of great football, but my goodness, once they see you're wounded, forget about it. Mm-hmm. They're coming after you. It reminds me a lot of that Pat Narduzzi defense in 2013 when they just came after it. I think it was Denard Robinson, and they just blitzed Happy. They just blitzed him all game long and said, you can't stop it, and we're not going to change the play. So that would be the big thing, is if Michigan jumped ahead early, then that would be concerning, because I don't think Michigan State can match a team point for points. That was my big concern going into the Penn State game, because Penn State was averaging 50 points a game. And I said, in order for MSU to win, they have to keep Penn State under 27 points. Little did I know they would keep them under 20 points and actually pull that thing off.
What is, finally, Rico, we won't do predictions because we're going to actually agree. Until I see Michigan State. Go ahead.
I can't do a prediction until I find out if Rashawn Gary's going to play.
Okay. To me, until I see, and I've been saying that since we lost to Notre Dame every week on the podcast. So until I see us go on the road and beat a ranked team, I'm not going to predict something until I see that they can do it. All right. So instead of a prediction, what is it about you guys' team that you think, outside of the normal, you guys never think we're any good? I mean, like real football stuff. What is it you think Michigan fans are overlooking about Michigan State they need to be prepared for on Saturday?
The will to win, the experience of doing it, the fact that every year Spartans and Spartan fans and the players have to read for 364 days everything Michigan, every little trip Michigan takes, how great they're going to be. They're going to the college football playoffs. Shea Patterson this, Rashad Gary that. Mm-hmm. Jim Harbaugh bought a new pair of khakis. And it goes on and on. And I hate to say it, but it is that disrespect thing. Kari Willis, the senior safety, talked about the chip on the shoulder. Steve, here's the thing. Certain things can be hokey, but if you believe in them, then they're not. I say that like the Miami Hurricanes turnover chain.
Yeah.
That team believes in that chain, and they play harder because they want to wear it. It's stupid. It's gaudy. But you know what? They believe in it. For Michigan State, it's the chip on the shoulder. And Kari Willis, before the Penn State game, during the week of practice, made every player bring their poker chip in and slam it on the table before they started practice. They believe in it. That chip on the shoulder mentality is real. That gives them the edge. We may not be as talented as those guys. We weren't as highly recruited as those guys, but damn it, we can go and beat those guys.
It's the old, basically just when George Costanza, Rico, it's true if you believe it, right? Doesn't matter if anybody else, if you believe it, there can be a lot of power in that belief system. Hey, great stuff, Rico. Thank you for hopping on and doing this at the last minute, and have followed your work over the years and appreciate your perspective. Thanks for being a part of the Michigan Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
More in a moment. Back here on Michigan Podcast and joined by my partner over at WolverineDigest.com as well as WTKA in Ann Arbor, Michael Spath. Good to have you back on the show, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys.
So I know you're getting ready to tape the film study you do with former Michigan quarterback Devin Gardner. Before we look at Michigan State, the big game this weekend, a huge effort, a big showing on national television by Michigan last week. I know you've already kind of taken a cursory look at the film. So sometimes you watch a game and it's a tough loss and you're like, when I watched the film, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And sometimes you watch a game when it's a dominant win in real time and you're like, really, if a couple of things go the other way, maybe this isn't as impressive as we thought. So which is it here with the Wisconsin film? Does the tape line up with the result?
I think actually it does in this case. And I tell you what, certainly Wisconsin could have done a couple of things differently. I thought that you and I have agreed on this. I think they had a awful game plan. Jonathan Taylor was gutting Michigan, and they kept on going away from it, and second and short and third and short. Third and short, maybe like 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, and they took him off the field, which is just asinine because then you're essentially taking away even the idea that there might be a running play for Wisconsin. So I didn't agree with that. But when you look at it, Michigan dominated, along the line of scrimmage in the entire second half. They didn't allow anything down the field. Really, the only thing that Wisconsin did well in this game was run the football in the first quarter and defend the run in the first quarter. Other than that, Michigan was in complete control of this game. Special teams, passing game, defending the pass, running the ball, capitalizing when they needed to. So, no, I thought this was a game where Michigan thoroughly dominated live. And then when I watched the game on film, they were having their way with the Badgers in the second half especially. And defensively, look, could they stop Jonathan Taylor? No, but Wisconsin, there's another part of the game, and the other part of the game is the passing attack. The other part of the game is dropping back, and when Alex Hornibrook did that, Michigan put him underneath tremendous pressure. So, no, I thought this was really as good as the film was as good as the outcome was on Saturday.
So I've not had a chance to go through the game entirely a second time yet. As I was watching it, though, in real time, and there were several plays on when we were throwing the ball where I was rewinding it and watching them again because Wisconsin, and now that you've watched the film, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed to me like we anticipated they were really going to come after us aggressively with blitz schemes, and we came out and spread them out to throw to set up the run rather than being stubborn, which Michigan fans we're always clamoring for that, right? And they were doing what we wanted them to do, and then we were trying to run these play action passes, but the lanes that were wide open to throw before weren't there. And I got the feeling that at the half we figured out, you know what? They're actually kind of playing us straight up. They're just rushing 4 guys, and we're trying to guess which of the 4 guys that it is, but it's really just 4 drop 7, and we went to a more conventional attack that's more Michigan run first, and that they really weren't playing that aggressive of a defensive scheme. Did I read that wrong as you watched the film?
No, I think that they played extremely disciplined. I think they played 11 on 11 and weren't really blitzing with their linebackers. I thought that they were just playing really sound fundamental football, and a lot of times, honestly, you run into very few teams nowadays that play sound fundamental football the entire time. And when you run into a team that does, that can throw you for a little bit of the loop. I mean, Michigan wants to run between the A gap and the B gap, and suddenly they found a team that was in those rushing lanes, and so they had to adjust a little bit. And if you talk about the play action pass works, and so many people think it's because the linebackers buy in. No, the linebackers really have nothing to do with it. It's catching those safeties, catching their eyes in the offensive backfield, and taking that half step forward, because the moment they take a half step forward, when you've got wide receivers that run 4.40s, all of a sudden those guys are in a full sprint and they get behind the safeties. And that didn't really happen on Saturday. Wisconsin was extremely disciplined. When I was watching the game live, I kept on thinking to myself going, why are Michigan's guys not open? And then getting a chance to watch the film a second time and seeing some of the, Devin has access to some of the full 22. And yeah, I mean, like when they would run play action, the safeties were just completely, their eyes were in the right place. They didn't take that false step forward. And that didn't allow Michigan's wide receivers to get behind them. I did think there were a couple opportunities where Shea had a one-on-one situation and he didn't throw the ball up to his wide receivers. Instead, he took the safe play, the check down, or he tried to scramble. And a couple of times we saw him, take a bad sack instead of throwing it up to his wide receiver. And so the one thing I'd like to see as an evolution of his game is you've got a 6'5" guy in Nico Collins. You've got a 6'3" guy in Donovan Peoples-Jones. You have a 6'8" guy in Zach Gentry. You got to trust him a little bit to make the play. Now, certainly a couple of his guys have burned him this year on 50-50 balls and some of the interceptions. But I would think in a situation like this, throw the ball up, put it into a pocket where only your wide receiver can get it, and let them make a play. And we didn't see a lot of that on Saturday, and I wonder if we'll have to see that against Michigan State, because Michigan State has a great rush defense, obviously, and they don't have a very good pass defense.
And, listen, in the end, if they're going to play you straight up, then you pound them. And that's what Michigan did with 320 yards rushing and only 4 yards passing in the second half. Let's take a look at this game coming up on Saturday. I think we know, and I really don't want us to be, we had Rico Beard on the show earlier this episode.
Oh, God.
And I don't... You'll probably get a kick out of that being your reaction. But I really don't want to be smarmy Michigan fans, because we don't have anything to be smarmy about right now.
No.
Basketball season ain't started yet, right? So, his big thing was that his concern is he doesn't think most of these injured Sparties that didn't go to Happy Valley will be back. He thought LJ Scott had the best chance, maybe one of the two linemen, and maybe Darryl Stewart, but the rest of the guys, no Cody White, no Josiah Scott, no the other lineman that's hurt. He didn't think most of those guys are going to be back. So his big concern was that the way Michigan has been able to grind teams down in the second half with their depth and their size, that if Michigan got up a score early, that sort of took the crowd out of the game. And then we get to the second half and their superior depth takes over. And if they can get it to a 2-score game, similar to what we saw against Wisconsin, where Michigan's defense really pins its ears back now and really takes advantage of your pass pro, that's what he thought was the path to a Michigan victory. What's your take on that?
Wow, I hate to say this, but I think Rico Beard just sounded like the smartest man alive right there. He's dead on. Michigan State does not have the firepower to win a game like 35-31, certainly not against this Michigan defense. And so when you look at this game, I mean, if Michigan does exactly what you just said, I mean, takes a couple of shots maybe in the first quarter, in the first half, if they can get it going to the half with the lead, especially if it's 10 points or more, and put Michigan State in a spot where they have to throw like they were doing against Penn State, trying to come back and tie that game and then win that game late. I mean, if you can allow this front seven to just be, hey, go after the quarterback, go get him, that's going to be a dangerous place for Brian Lewerke to be in, because the offensive line is banged up. He's certainly mobile, but this is a group with Khaleke Hudson and Chase Winovich and the interior of the defensive line. Devin Bush that can get after the quarterback in very physical, punching ways. We saw Devin Bush with a huge sack and just chucked Alex Hornibrook to the ground on Saturday, and I think that went a long way. And maybe the way that he was a little skittish in that pocket after that. Certainly I look at this and say, yeah, I mean, if they can get up a couple of scores, Michigan State's going to have a very hard time coming back. They don't have the weapons at wide receiver right now. Brian Lewerke, great performance in that fourth quarter against Michigan State, but you just don't think that, he's going to be able to do that consistently, series after series against this Michigan defense. And so, I'm really curious to see what Michigan does, because I suspect that they're going to continue to run the football with a aggression, with a commitment to running the football that we've seen every single week so far, and then try to take those play action shots down the field. And maybe we'll see something new and unique. But I really think that the formula for Michigan is to run the ball. And that's going against Michigan State's greatest strength. And so we'll have to see who prevails in that matchup on Saturday. But I certainly think that Michigan won't go away from it. And I certainly think that Michigan State is thinking that this is their best chance to be successful, is if they can stop Michigan's running game in its tracks.
I don't think this game has anything to do with Michigan State, Michael. I don't. I think we know what we're going to get.
Similar to the Wisconsin game.
Yeah, I think this is about who Michigan is. I think Michigan State is 8-2 under D'Antonio straight up in this rivalry. in the last 10 years. They've covered all 10 of them against the spread. They've outperformed the point spread on average of 6.5 points per matchup. I think we know what we're going to get. We know, and I don't want to be smarmy Michigan fan this week. Yes, they're going to bring their A game, but it's not just because it's us. They have a big game mentality there. I mean, he's got 10 wins against top 10 teams since 2009. All right, so they know how to play with reckless abandon in these spots. He knows how to exert his will on game day that forces a Urban Meyer to panic and stop handing the ball to Ezekiel Elliott and a Jim Harbaugh to panic and have John O'Corn chucking and ducking in a frickin' monsoon. He knows how to do all that. He knows that. To me, they're the known commodity. They need this game to require 21 points or so to win. We know that. Okay. To me, this is about Michigan. And this is about what Michigan's identity is. Will Michigan's coaches, once the ball kicks off on offense, understand the difference between persistence and stubbornness? Will the Michigan defense, after the Michigan offense scores, give up the score? They even did that against Wisconsin last week.
They did.
Everything we saw last year, when our offense finally put it together, they'd give up the score. They even did that last week. To me, Quinn Nordin on those field goals. I think this is all about the guys wearing the winged helmets on Saturday. What they do.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, certainly, we've been talked a lot about on the show this week about the intensity and whether Michigan can match the anger of Michigan State. And I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it comes down to whether or not Michigan can match the mental focus.
Yeah, the execution. I agree. Yeah.
Because it's not about playing with rage. It's about playing with intelligence and smarts.
They went out there a couple of years ago, and what'd they do? Stomp on the S or defecate on it or something, right? And then Devin Gardner got sacked 17 times. Okay, so I mean that's you know what that is? That doesn't do. That's fan talk. Okay, what I want to know is, can they play freaking football when it matters in this game? That's what really matters.
Yeah, and certainly the first quarter. The first quarter matters. That to me, the difference of this Michigan team is in that first quarter of this game on Saturday, are they going to come out like they did against Northwestern and Notre Dame? Are they going to come out the way that they did against Maryland and Wisconsin to some extent? I mean, they didn't put the ball in the end zone, but they were really effective moving the football in that first quarter. And so, yeah, I mean, Michigan State is going to be ready from the moment this game starts because they know that they have to win the first quarter. Michigan State doesn't win the first quarter, they're in trouble the rest of the game. Does Michigan understand that they have to win the first quarter? And even more importantly than understanding that, do they know how to win the first quarter? Are they locked in from the get-go? Are they ready to execute? Does John Runyon and Juwan Bushell-Beatty need a series before they're playing their best football? Does Karan Higdon, who I thought had a really poor first half, on Saturday against Wisconsin, and certainly, his linemen need to hold their blocks a bit longer. But he didn't hit the hole with the type of gusto that he needed to make those into big plays. In the second half, he ran angry, he ran hard, he ran with great vision, with the ability to see the cutback lanes. And so, how long does it take this Michigan offense to get going? If it takes up more than a quarter, well, guess what? They could find themselves down 7-0, down 10-3, something like that. And Michigan State has all this momentum. And the only thing you don't want to give the Spartans in this game is that early success and that early enthusiasm, because if they do that, they're going to be much harder to extinguish quarter after quarter after quarter, to the point where you could run out of time just because you put yourself in a hole. And so, yeah, how important is that first quarter on Saturday? It's probably the most important quarter that Michigan football has played all season long.
So I'm on record. I mean, I'm picking Michigan State till I see Michigan go on the road and beat a ranked team on the road. What's your view of this game on Saturday?
I can completely understand that. And, Steve, I'll tell you what, after that Notre Dame game, I was 100% right there with you. But I guess I've been drinking a little too much Kool-Aid lately because I just think that this Michigan football team has made the growth this season that I wanted to see, that they have been really good in the trenches, that Shea Patterson has played, for the most part, mistake-free football, that their skill players have come to play and are getting the most out of their talent. The defensive backfield, a little bit of a weakness, but for the most part, the last couple of weeks has solidified at the cornerback spot and is getting great play out of Tyreek Kindle and Josh Metellus. And the special teams generally favor Michigan at this point. And so, I can understand being hesitant to pick them, and I don't fault you at all for going against Michigan State. But I'm looking at this one and saying this is a different Michigan football team, and maybe I'm just a sucker. And I hope not, but I've got Michigan winning by 10 on Saturday.
Well, obviously, we hope you're right. And I want you to be right. But my motto has been, since South Carolina, the M in this case sometimes stands for Missouri. You got to show me, right? So show me. I like what I've seen. And I mean, the game against Wisconsin was a tremendous effort. But again, it was at home. And now we go outdoors, on grass, on the road. I've seen this one before. So I'm not going to project any more scripts. I need them to rewrite the script for me. But I think everybody knows here, by the ghost of Yost, we hope that you are right, Michael. Thanks for joining us again this week on Michigan Podcast.
Absolutely, and I hope that you're wrong, Steve.
As do I, man. Go Blue. We'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good.
If you want to keep up with what we think about the Wolverines all week long, aside from when we're doing this for Michigan Podcast, check us out at WolverineDigest.com or Wolverine Maven, part of the Maven Network, WolverineDigest.com. Myself and Michael Spath from WTKA in Ann Arbor, we keep you up to date with our commentary all week long. And one of the really cool things I love about how this site works is that the sidebar there where we can give you, almost like a Mike Florio does at Pro Football Talk, where you can give you little mini updates via Twitter and other interactions, things that you probably want to know, be aware of, but don't require 500 to 700 word columns. I love that part of our website. It's a really easy, functional website to follow, WolverineDigest.com. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you, will Michigan beat Michigan State on Saturday? 82% of you said yes. I wish I were as confident as you are, but 82%? I mean, I was very confident going into last week. This week, nervous, anxious, tension, danger, because I've been here, and we just don't come out of that stadium very often with a win. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope your confidence is correct. My Big Ten power ratings this week, I've got Ohio State on top, Michigan number 2, the Iowa Hawkeyes soaring to number 3. They have played a sneaky tough schedule. Sagarin has their schedule the 26th toughest in the country, and that's with an FCS opponent. So that's pretty good. I've got Sparty with the big road win in Happy Valley at number 4, Penn State next, Wisconsin, and then I think there's a substantial drop-off after those teams. And I think you could take Maryland, Northwestern, Purdue. I think that's your middle tier. And then I think there's a substantial drop-off after those guys. And then I think after Illinois, which is just terrible, there's Rutgers, which is cataclysmic. Sagarin this week has Rutgers rated the 153rd best team in college football. Folks, there's only 130 teams in FBS Division I. Is that bad? I think that might be bad. This week's question of the week comes from Shane Majewski. This is a good question. That's why we picked it. He says, in your opinion, why hasn't Michigan forced as many turnovers as a defense, especially given how aggressive we play? That's surprising. And on the surface, Shane is exactly right. Now, I'm going to take fumbles and just throw those out because they're so totally random. And there's so much spread offense nowadays anyway. We don't have gang tackling like we had, back in the day at least as often. I don't think fumbles are even as plentiful as they used to be. So, and turnovers in general are kind of random. That's why Phil Steele has that, turnovers up, down, turnovers equals turnaround stat in his magazine every year. Because a lot of times if you're plus 10, 11, 12, 13 one year, you're going to be lucky to come close to that or even break even the next. And then if you have a terrible year in turnovers, it tends to even out, regress to the mean the other way the following year. But I do think fans are wondering, and there's a good reason to ask this, how about given how tight a coverage we play? Right now, David Long is rated in terms of completion percentage, number 1 corner in the country by Pro Football Focus. So given how tight a man-to-man coverage we play, how much pressure we put on quarterbacks, why don't we get more interceptions? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One is I think offenses are adjusting their schemes. And they're going to much quicker passing games because of Michigan's tight man-to-man, plus the pressure we put on the quarterback. But I think there's another part of this that fans are overlooking, and I want you to see this graphic here, right? This is Michigan's third down defense statistically on a national level under Don Brown. So in 2016, Michigan was number 1 in the country, allowing only 21% third down conversions. That's video game stuff. In 2017, that's a video game number 2, 26%. Now this year, we're not as good, but not as good as 32%. That's excellent. All right. So on average, under Don Brown, teams are, I'm doing some quick math. That's about 28% is the average third down conversion percentage you get against our defense. I wonder, and I've never met Don Brown or talked to him, but if we had Don Brown on Michigan podcast, here's the question I would ask him. Does your defensive philosophy factor in that turnovers can be kind of a random occurrence and that you can far more control what your opponent does against you on third down? And so the emphasis of the Michigan defense is getting off the field on third down compared to creating turnovers, because you know what? If you're holding teams to less than 30% third down conversion, that's like +1 or 2 in turnovers right there, especially when you're converting like 49% as our offense is right now. And I wonder if Don Brown would say, turnovers are kind of random. A deflected ball here, like the interception Metellus had against Wisconsin, a fumble there. Karan Higdon had the fumble. That could have been a huge game-changing play. We got lucky the ball rolled out of bounds. What if it just stopped rolling and dropped and the Wisconsin guy fell on it in our territory? Maybe that's their momentum play. We don't know. And so I wonder if Michigan's defense just decides, turnovers are random. Our focus is on what we can control, and we have much more control as a defense on getting off the field on third down. And if we do that enough, if we're holding teams to less than 30% third down conversions consistently, and our offense is converting darn near 50%, that's like being +1 or 2 in turnovers every game anyway in the field position battle and scoring differential. So I wonder if that's part of the way Michigan plays defense, and maybe we as fans need to start looking at that maybe a tad differently. Just something to think about. Excellent question, Shane. Want to thank our friends at Detroit Sports Podcast for helping us spread the word about Michigan Podcast every week. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play for the audio version. You can follow us on Twitter at Michigan Podcast and get all of our content at WolverineDigest.com as well. Let's hope and pray for a great big Michigan victory on Saturday. Until next week, I'm Steve Deace. Go Blue.